So, hey guys, Flanders Ladder is the 21st episode of Season 29. It was directed by Matthew Nastuk and written by J. Stewart Burns? And it first aired on May the 20th, 2018. This is the first episode I'm reviewing that I hadn't previously watched. So for context, these are my fresh thoughts on this episode. The episode follows Bart through a dream sequence where he is met by various dead characters and is tasked with helping them move on. In the real world, we have our B-plot with Lisa getting her revenge on Bart for humiliating her in a viral video he posted online. So anyway, let's not diddy-daddle any longer and jump into analysing the plot. The episode starts off with Bart tricking Lisa into playing this parody of the Scary Maze game, and I've got to say this reference feels really outdated, even for 2018. Lisa gets humiliated when she gets scared of the game and Bart posts her reaction online. This scene actually resonated with me a lot, as I remember when I was younger I actually watched a bunch of these reactions to this Scary Maze game. They were kind of all over YouTube. This scene becomes tricky in terms of where we put it on our plot path, as arguably this is the inciting incident for Lisa's B-plot, but it doesn't serve as the inciting incident for Bart's story. I think the inciting incident for Bart's main plot is when the internet goes down, as without that happening he wouldn't have been hit by lightning. Anyway, after the internet goes down, the family end up watching Homer's old VHSs, but after the VHSs break, they decide they need the internet to find a VHS repairman. Bart and Homer decide to try and steal Flanders' router, and Bart gets hit by lightning. Bart getting hit by lightning, as I said, is our plot point 1. And this effectively shifts us into the second act. Lisa begins to torture Bart by putting bad thoughts in his head and flashing a flashlight on him. And in the dream world, he is met by Mod's ghost. Milhouse gives him a psychiatrist's number and Bart visits him and tells him he's seeing a ghost, but it turns out the psychiatrist is also dead. Bart sees multiple ghosts and a bunch of characters who have died on the show, and I gotta say that it is really awesome that they did this. I really like the fact that we see the Snowballs, Bleeding Gums Murphy, Sherry Bobbins, and even Jebediah Springfield. This psychiatrist scene is the midpoint, or no return point if you like, of the story, as it shifts Bart into the second half of the second act. Bart helps the ghosts one by one move on until he is faced with Maud Flanders, who demands she gets revenge on the person who killed her. I don't know how needed this flashback scene is of Maud's death. It's kind of one of the most famous moments in The Simpsons. I don't really think they need it, but it doesn't go on for too long, so whatever. Bart helps Maud get revenge, and this is our plot point 2, and shifts us into the third and final act. Bart, with the help of the bullies, pummels Homer with t-shirts, and he unexpectedly dies. Bart is sorry about causing his dad's death, and he tries to convince him to stay in the real world and not go to the ghost world, but Homer decides to move on anyway, before Bart uses a t-shirt gun to break heaven. I guess. This is our climax. Although I don't think this climax flows that nicely from Act 1, considering that we never see Homer in the dream world in Act 1, I think this could have worked really well if maybe Homer was starting to feel a high level of guilt for Maud's death maybe, after losing Edna. Ned was depressed, let's say, and Homer can't help feeling guilty, for he wouldn't be going through this if it wasn't for the pain that Homer caused earlier. But whatever. Bart comes out of the dream world, but was it a dream world? Who knows? Maybe Milhouse is connected to the ghost world. It would explain a lot about Milhouse. The episode ends with Bart telling Lisa how each of them are going to die. Whalen kills himself, Homer gets shot, Wiggum chokes, Marge just kind of dies, and it turns out Ned has banged pretty much every woman in Springfield, Skinner has a heart attack, Bart gets killed by a dead Skinner in his wheelchair, Lisa dies realising she's wasted her life, Ralph gets poisoned, and Maggie never died. There is an argument that this is canon, as Bart is seen as a judge just like he is seen in Season 4 Episode 6, but honestly I'm mixed on if I want this segment to be canon or not. It's a bit icky, Anyway, that is the main plot done with, so let's briefly talk about our B-plot. The B-plot is pretty much just Lisa vowing revenge on Bart, doing the torch thing, adding Milhouse to the mix, and then learning what she did may have actually potentially killed Bart. The whole death thing and the way they escalated with Hibbert and Lisa's kind of regret, I feel is a bit unnecessary. They really don't have much time to develop it. I really didn't feel much tension in the scene as a whole. The main plot is another cliche, it was all a dream thing. But honestly, I'm not entirely against these dreamlike episodes in sitcoms. Sitcoms, most of the time, could just all be it was just a dream, as they normally maintain the status quo ending. I think overall the plot is decent. Nothing amazing, but it feels cohesive, even though it's a dream sequence episode. Although, just like Homer's triple bypass, I think they could have done so much more with this dream sequence, or the themes of this episode. Maybe instead of Lisa being the one to bring this torture to Bart, it's Homer. I think this way, we could kind of get a sort of retcon for Homer feeling really guilty for the stuff he's done to Ned, and him actually causing Maud's death and feeling guilty for it. However, I think what they did was acceptable. The dream sequence as a whole acts as a great place for Bart's arc, even though there isn't much of one, and it also really gives a great environment for jokes. Speaking of... Okay, so I don't think this episode is laugh out loud or anything. I think the highlight in terms of humour is that final segment. Ned's dead wives and Homer getting shot at the food bank are both pretty funny visual jokes. Grandpa's porn cutting out is kind of funny, I guess, but I question why he's watching it in the living room around the kids. The ghost ants wanting revenge on Nelson is pretty solid as well, and the homeless guy wanting revenge on the train is pretty funny too. I like the Rabbi Krustaskovsky complaining about why he's waiting for the bus when he can just teleport away, and Moe serving his barflies lager is pretty funny too. As I said, the scary maze game thing is kind of dated. Honestly, I didn't smile or laugh once when Lisa was getting humiliated. Honestly, I found the whole humour a little childlike. The paramedics not being able to get Homer in the ambulance is another kind of lame joke too. I think this is really an episode that isn't putting humour first, rather is wanting to explore this new world that Bart is entering. I think overall the humour is fine, it's nothing exceptional, it's nothing bad, but I think it's really trying to look at this new world and look at Bart. So I think it's time to move on and look at Bart's character in this episode. I think it's fair to say that Bart is the main character in this episode. Homer doesn't have much presence in the real world after plot point 1. In fact, he doesn't really seem to care much about his son being in a coma. Neither does Marge, but I guess, as Hibbert says, it happens quite often. Lisa is the opposite, where she isn't present in the dream world, like, at all. Bart, although unconscious, for the most part is active in both plots. He's active in the real world and the ghost world, as even though he's unconscious in the real world, without him being unconscious, Lisa wouldn't want to torture him and later feel guilty. Bart doesn't get much character growth or anything. It kind of feels like the writer's just playing around with this ghost world concept, really. Lisa, however, doesn't really feel like her whole self. I know we've seen Lisa and Bart have sibling rivalry before, but this is kind of dark. Seeing Lisa torturing Bart like this, and even if she didn't know that this could threaten his life, she's still torturing her brother who's just been struck by lightning and is in a mild coma. It's really screwed up. This doesn't feel like the Lisa Simpson I know at all. Like I said, I think this could have worked better as a Homer and Bart story, instead of a Lisa and Bart story with Homer at the end. Not saying that Homer should torture Bart like Lisa does, but seeing Lisa doing this feels so goddamn wrong. Finally, we gotta talk about the ghosts. I'll be the first to admit it, that I thought this was cool as hell to see them all. Maud is technically an antagonist of this episode, but is it just me, or does Maud's ghost always seem like so different of a character to the alive Maud? It just feels like she's so evil, whereas I feel that the alive Maud was a very forgiving person. Anyway, that's all I've got on the characters, really. So let's answer if this episode is good or bad? Okay, so after gathering all my thoughts and really thinking about this episode with a critical mind, I have to conclude that Flanders Ladder is good, but not that good. This episode is almost the epitome of a standard modern Simpsons episode. It's kind of what I come to expect. It has things in it that you like, but nothing to go crazy about. I have my issues with how they frame Lisa, and I really wish they did more with this mini realm they created. But overall, I didn't finish watching this episode thinking I just had a bad experience. If anything, I was kind of indifferent about it. Overall, I give Flanders Ladder a 5 out of 10. Now, let's move on to the wheel. So, let's find out what episode I'm reviewing next week. Bam. So, the next episode I'm going to be reviewing is Some Enchanted Evening. I have no idea what episode that is. Okay, quick edit. I feel really dumb for not realising what episode this was. I'm excited.